Hello, my name is Candace Romero, and it has been my absolute privilege and honor to be teaching people about doTERRA's essential oils for the last 9 years and helping people live their most vibrant life. If you'd like to learn more about my natural solutions, please feel free to contact me on Facebook at Bay Area Terra Tribe Essential Oils and Natural Solutions, or check out my website, my.doterra.com/Romero. That's my.doterra.com/ROMERO. Thank you.
State ascoltando il podcast E.I.T.H.R con E.I.T.H.R.
Once again, hey! Put your hands up.
Hey, good afternoon to everybody. It's your boy Cal here, host of the E.I.T.H.R podcast. Today is Monday the 27th, and you are listening to episode number 17 of the podcast. And I just want to say thank you guys very, very much for your support and for all the new subscribers and new people we have to the podcast. This is for you. Just want to make sure I gave you guys your just due and respect and your moment of shine on this Monday afternoon. Happy summer to everybody, man. It's nice and cool outside, right? Depending on where you are. Here, we're located here in Sacramento, California at the GNS Inc. HQ here in the state capitol. You guys can go ahead and follow us on social media. You can find us with the same handle on Twitter. You can find us with the same handle on Instagram, which is at the E.I.T.H.R, TheEITHR. For those who are not really aware what's going on, the E.I.T.H.R podcast is where I express my opinions on certain topics, kind of get my voice across. Politically, I do my best to kind of keep everything right down the middle. I always was more towards the liberal or left side. Until I realized when you really pay attention to politics, it's all bullshit. It doesn't matter what side. There's an indigenous quote, and I love this thing for I don't know how many years, and it says left wing, right wing, it doesn't matter when it represents the same bird. The scale is never going to be balanced in a dual party system, but you're one party away from being in a communist comedy. So, I mean, depending on who you ask, we already are in one. But I guess that opinion determines whose party is in charge. But the E.I.T.H.R is an acronym for the elephant in the room. This is kind of where we talk about discussions of things that a lot of people don't have the gravitas to bring up, the maturity to hold a conversation, or their perspectives are very short-sighted and narrow-minded. I know that I do have my perspective, my position, my belief on certain things, but I also do my best to keep an open perspective because, hey, even though we may not see eye to eye, you may have some perspective that makes me say, okay, I understand from that angle, I didn't see it from that perspective, and now I get to stand back a little bit and see it from a broader range. And never wanted to sit back and say, I'm never wrong, I'm always right. Especially in certain conversations when it comes to things that I don't know. Because you might have access to information that I don't know, and the information that I have access to, you may not know. But a lot of people have this thing of where they just have to be right all the time. And I do my best to make sure that, I'm receptive to things that may not be from the same viewpoint as I. Because, you can learn from anything and you can learn from everything if you pay close enough attention. So that's what that is. If you guys also have YouTube, you can follow our parent company, GNS Inc. on YouTube. Just do the search and follow there, subscribe, and then if you're unable to get a hold of us on a live subscription for the podcast, you can check us right there on the YouTube. The music that you hear in the back is courtesy of GNS Inc. It's GNS Entertainment is the entertainment branch of the company, so they kind of take care of the music, the movie, the media, and all that fun stuff. So if anybody has any movie ideas or possibly looking maybe get into modeling or something of that sort, you're more than welcome to reach us at the social media, and then we'll get you guys connected with everybody so we can go ahead and make some magic happen together. But it's all about teamwork, right? It's not about your network, but it's about your network. And your network is your net worth. So I want to go ahead and get that out. I like to start the podcast off also with some encouraging words, motivational things to kind of help people out. The one thing I would like to do is, everybody's kind of hectic right now. Just like we're not talking about anything, political, financial, just the mentality of people, man, is extremely stressed out, and time stops for no woman or no man. So what could help you save some time in your days is the little things, right? It's the little steps that help you climb mountains. So the night before, you get ready to go to bed, call it a night. If you could possibly do yourself this small favor, it works for me. Try to get your clothes that you're going to wear the next day already planned out. Millionaires and multimillionaires, they do things like this. It helps what's called stops decision fatigue. And decision fatigue, and a lot of people understand how this works, you probably just didn't know that it had an official name, is where you make so many decisions throughout your day that eventually you can't get a decision, or some of the simplest things you are presented, you cannot come with a conclusion of where to go, what to do, how to make it happen. And that can lead to what's called mental capacity act, which you just have the dumb, you just can't think. So by doing things like getting your clothes ready for tomorrow the night before, it eliminates you having to worry about something that's so minor and so simple that it can help you have a better day when it comes to decision, because it was already pre-planned, it was already pre-arranged, it was already pre-assigned, it was already pre-done. And if you're the kind of person that has several different ideas of what you may want to wear, or you're not too sure because it all depends on what your mood is, what I do is I look at the weather. I try to look at the weather for the whole week. But if you're that kind of person that just want to see what's tomorrow, can't really plan for 3 days ahead, I understand that too. Look to see what the weather is tomorrow. Have an A, then have a B option. So now you have two different options. So when you wake up tomorrow morning, okay, I'm going to wear this. You know what? Nah, cool. I decided to go with this one. Either way it goes, it minimizes the stress of picking out what to wear. Okay. And then if you understand that something is dirty, you don't have to worry about last minute of freaking out and trying to plan something, especially if you're trying to coordinate your wardrobe, make sure everything matches. It's already set. Kind of old school, we used to do that back in school. So we didn't have to really worry about what we were going to have to wear the next day. So that's what that is. The topic that I want to get into for this podcast is called perception versus deception. And there's a difference. At the same time, I believe that they're kind of intertwined with one another. And a lot of us get them misconstrued, and we don't really know how to differentiate the two. Perception is how you perceive things, right? It's you see something, you observe something, you take in something, you perceive something. How you process it is your perception. Now, obviously, everybody doesn't have the same type of perception when it comes to certain things, but individually, that's how you do it. A deception, it kind of sounds the way it comes off. It's a lie. It's a mislead. It's a redirect, if you will. Sometimes it even has a hidden agenda. Okay, when it comes to deception. So let's say, for example, back in high school, right? Ladies, remember back in school when you would hang around more males than you did with females? Because there's some females who just feel women and girls are messy, and hanging around guys was just so much easier, right? But then that rumor got started that, you were a whore, you were this, you were that. Why? Because you were always seen with more than one guy. You were always seen with a different guy. I remember in school, hugging was always a big deal, right? Or somebody wearing your hoodie or your Letterman jacket. The perception is you're the kind of person that is going around and just extremely friendly, if you will. And so then rumors would get started. The deception to that was really the person who was saying these things about you. They were more envious of you. They were more jealous of you. You have people who hate on you for no reason, mainly because they see things in you that they're liking within themselves. I know guys would do that all the time. If you see someone who's physically fit, someone who's handsome, we have to throw a jab at that person. He's on steroids. He's probably this. He's probably that. Fill in the blanks or whatever the case may be. That's the deception, is to make you hate them so you can like me more. When it comes to business aspects, the perception of a business who talks down another business or knocks down another business or tries to undercut another business, the perception is, oh, that business right here they're talking about is really bad, it's really awful. The deception to that is they have to knock another person down to big themselves up. They have to stand on somebody else's back as they cut them at the knees so that way they're able to stand taller. So whenever someone does something of that nature, not so much out the blue, but a consistent basis of always saying something negative about a person, a certain group, an area, I tend to look for the opposite because there's a great chance that the opposite is what's really true. They just take the small negative and make that to be the bigger thing. If you really kind of tie that into the world of today, you kind of see a resemblance when it comes to stuff. So one of the problems that we have is, and I said this to the last podcast we did on Friday, negative energy is always going to outdo positive energy. It's twice as powerful. So you have to work twice as hard to match it. That's just what it is. If you ever watch the news, and a lot of us do, despite us saying we don't. If you're not watching your television, you're watching it from your phone or your laptop or something of that nature. Whenever the news is saying something about somebody, the first thing that pops in my mind now is, what are they not telling me about? What's the other side of this equation? Yes, I understand the news, the purpose is to, quote unquote, inform us. But what are they not saying? Right? What is it? For years upon years upon years. I can't remember what documentary it was, but I remember Los Angeles, California, for example, was always feared by people across the country as this beautiful beach, sun-kissed tans, bikinis, skates, bodybuilding, weightlifting guys on Venice Beach, just surfing and real laid-back, chill lifestyle, right? That was the perception. But the deception to that was when the unfortunate riots happened, I believe in 1991 or 1992. And it became on Time magazine. And it kind of showed the world that LA is not just all surf and sun. It's just not. we got problems too. And this is what they're hiding. The deception was LA has problems just like New York. LA has problems just like Texas. LA has problems just like the Bay Area. It has problems like any other major metropolitan city. But they wanted you to perceive that it was something different so they can kind of divide the two. Flip side of that, they would also broadcast all the negative things in all the poorer neighborhoods to keep you from going to those neighborhoods. It was almost like a what's the word I'm looking for? A terrestrial version of segregation, right? And I know you're probably thinking like, come on, man, like serious, like that. Think about it. They would say everything negative about this neighborhood, everything positive about this neighborhood. But when it came to most sporting events, if you notice where most of your sporting events are, they're located in more of the poorer neighborhoods, which is, to me, kind of interesting, right? And then you kind of just got to understand how these things work behind the scene, because they're not going to be so much on the surface as they used to be, because that's no longer socially acceptable, but they still do exist. And we're going to get into the elephant of the room right after a mention from the sponsor right quick. And I just want to give a shout out to the Federal Development Group. Be right back, y'all.
Yo, what up, folks? This is Rodney Farrell, the CEO of Federal Development Group, and you're listening to the E.I.T.H.R podcast, hosted by E.I.T.H.R. Let's get it.
Anybody who is unaware of what that is, whenever you hear the elephant noise, that stands for we about to get down to the nitty gritty, as they so eloquently used to say in the suburbs back in the day. Okay, so for those who haven't seen or heard as of yet, there's a video that's going around with Illinois Congresswoman Mary Miller, where she's standing at a podium, and you have ex-President Trump standing behind her to her left, and she's giving a speech. And part of the clip that's being displayed, that's used on social media, and it's on our Instagram page as well, at the E.I.T.H.R, where she basically thanks Donald Trump and everybody else because of the overturning of Roe versus Wade and the preserve of white life in America. Now, when you watch the video, the first thing is instinctively you're waiting for is for her to either catch herself or reiterate what she meant, or to even do the whole, I'm sorry, what I meant was for life in America. She didn't do any of that. She kind of just rolled with the punches and started clapping. We get into the point of the world right now where a lot of things that are going on, ladies and gentlemen, who are listening to the podcast today, we are becoming extremely desensitized with shit that should not be happening. And that's one of them. To get on national TV. Now, I know there's certain people out there who are saying, well, yeah, you can be proud to be black and proud to be brown, and why can't you be proud to be white? No one's saying you can't be proud to be white. You should be. You should be proud to be who you are. But no one's knocking that. But the issue that a lot of people feel is the problem is you have this hypocrisy of division yet unity within the country. Why, after Roe versus Wade, are you even mentioning the saving of white life? Aren't you saving all lives? Hello to the All Life Matter group, right? Isn't that kind of what the whole agenda is? And no, that's not the point. That's not it whatsoever. Anybody who knows Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott is an activist, and she's a teacher, and she's why am I lost for the words of how to describe her? But she's a think of her as an activist. Okay, since the 60s and 70s, and she's been around a multitude of different shows explaining the division and explaining the hypocrisy that we have in this country when it comes to segregation and racism. And one of her videos, she references to the book written by Ben Wattenberg. And the name of the book, if some of you may be familiar with it, is called The Birth Dearth. And the birth dearth, within the first page, I believe, it states that white supremacy is to make sure that the population of white people is 60% or higher. Okay, as long as the population is 60% at minimum, then white people will have the majority control of what goes on in this country. And what's happening is multiracial relationships, multiracial children, multiracial families are starting to grow, which is causing the quote unquote white race to diminish. Okay, so a lot of people are panicking, and this is all going to tie in at the end, trust me. And I know there's people who probably don't agree with that. Again, you have some people who are just going to die on the cliff that's on the hill and say this is what this is, and that's fine. But it's kind of interesting when he breaks down in this book how, because of the rise of multiracial families and the isolated white families are starting to drop or starting to shrink and lower, they came up with 3 different solutions on how you can fix this. And one of them was to pay white women to have babies. But the issue with that, then you have to pay all women money to have children. And ideally, that's not what you want to do. The second option, I believe they said, was to import more women, white women into the country. Well, if you do that, you have to import women of color as well. Because the first 2 options are going to look as if, well, why are you doing this for them and not for them? It's going to be too blatant, it's going to be too obvious, it's going to be too in your face. So the next thing was to basically eliminate any type of prevention of them being born organically, right? And so, something to that effect. And it's really, really interesting how they're panicking. And when I say about white people, I want to make sure that there's a distinct clarification, at least here on the E.I.T.H.R podcast, and my perspective. I'm not talking about every single white person you go out there and you see on the highway. Okay? What I'm saying is the white people who particularly run this country, and we're going to get into that in just one quick second. Trust me, believe me. Or the white people who feel like they're the superior race, is their only race, so on and so forth. When the actuality is, if you look back at history, where did all men originate? And Jane Elliott also speaks about this too, that every single person on this planet has African descent within their blood, whether they choose to believe that or not. Science has proven that, and depending on your religion, if you believe in Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, your spirituality even tells you that. But remember what I said earlier when it comes to perception and deception. When you have somebody who's constantly trying to hide something by throwing shade at another person or another group. Okay, it is very interesting when you get these people who want to try to belittle and knock down this group over here so they can stand tall on everyone else's shoulders. That they cut the knees from underneath. And that's kind of what's been going on for decades, if you will. Now, the piggyback of the Roe versus Wade, which again, on my last podcast, we kind of got a little detail in that in episode 16. But I want to speak on this. I want to say it was earlier today when you get Senator John Cornyn, or Cornyn, I think that's how you pronounce his name, John Cornyn, who wants to reverse the Plessy versus Ferguson Act. And those who are not familiar with Plessy versus Ferguson, it was, I believe, done in 1896, where the decision by the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that racial segregation laws do not violate as long as the facilities for each race are equal and are of quality. Now, if anything that the Roe versus Wade has taught us, it's verbiage, it's wording. And a lot of what is written in our town, city, county, state, country laws, they're on white paper. They have black text, but it's extremely gray. Have you ever looked at your state law? I remember a few years ago, I was curious just to kind of look to see on different laws so I can learn some California penal codes, so I'm aware of what to and what not to do when I'm out in public. Every year they're revised, so you might get a different format or they might be at a different location. But I do remember these laws that I was reading. A lot of them started off with, it is the intent of this, or it is not the intent of this. From my understanding and speaking to people, when you start off something that says it is the intent of, or it is not the intent of, that by default leaves so much room to finagle away into that gray area, into a loophole, if you will. Because it's like someone owning a gun, and you're playing around with a gun, and the gun goes off. Well, my intent was not to shoot the gun, but it happened, right? My intent was not to speed. I was just going with the flow of truck. Well, you were speeding. Last podcast we talked about, you have spirit of the law, and then there's letter of the law. What's happening now is people in the Supreme Court are trying to redo things for the last 50 to 100 years simply because they were not letter of the law, but they were more spirit of the law. Now, someone's going to hear that and say, see, so they're not doing anything wrong. It all depends on your perception. Because like I said, right now, my man wants to reverse the Plessy versus Ferguson Act. He wants to get rid of that. He wants to go back to a time where segregation is perfectly fine, as long as everything is equal and fair. But again, ladies and gentlemen, as I said before, it's all about the wording. Perception versus deception, right? What is fair? What is fair to them may not be fair to you. And since these are the people who are making the laws, who are obviously trying to salvage who they feel is priority, who is to say that the conditions that people of color are going to be living under won't be worse than what they are now? Yet, they are of quality, because something just needs to function and work. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be sparkly. It doesn't have to even work on a, what we feel, consistent basis. Hell, if you go to jail in Sacramento, California, your toilet only flushes 4 times an hour. People are like, what the hell that got to do with anything? Well, because if you have to use the bathroom more than 4 times in 1 hour, you stuck with whatever's in there, right? You're given a shower once every 72 hours. And so it's like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Because once every 3 days, with a toilet that only flushes 4 times an hour, what do you think that does to a person? If you have to go, you can't go because you gotta wait, and there's no clock in your cell or in your pod or in your whatever the case may possibly be, right? I make that analogy just to kind of paint the picture of people of what is normal to you may not be normal to somebody else. It's some of the things that we have on the quote unquote outside, we take advantage that is taken away from other people. Okay, so they want to go back to, it was suggested that we may go back to this time. Now, he just didn't stop there. Okay, John Cornyn also suggested that we get rid of Brown versus education. And what Brown versus education, what that was, I believe it was established in 1956. I may be off with the year. But it was a landmark by the Supreme Court that ruled that state laws establishing racial segregation in public schools was in fact unconstitutional. Even if the working conditions or the school or the building and everything was equal and of quality, it was unconstitutional to do so. Okay, so even if the school was functioning, quote unquote, and equal and of quality, it's still unconstitutional to segregate students. That is that is being suggested to be overruled and removed by Texas Senator John Cornyn. When politicians, if you guys ever notice, when they give a speech, they always refer to the American people. Well, I remember when Mitch Connolly was speaking, he said something to the, I want to say it was during the COVID, and it might have been for vaccinations or the rise in numbers. I don't remember specifically what the topic was about, but I remember him speaking, and he says something, African Americans have, whatever disproportion is, something versus regular Americans. And it was like, bro, you said the quiet part out loud. Now, to some people, okay, what did he say? No big deal. Right. African Americans versus regular American. What's a regular American, bro? Like, what is that? What is a regular American compared to a Hispanic American? What's a regular American compared to an indigenous American? So our government classifies everybody else by their color and heritage, but it classifies white Americans as regular Americans, just normal people. That's what he said. Now, someone was going to try to use the whole perception versus deception against me. That's just someone who's trying to start an argument in tongue-in-cheek. It makes no sense to me that it's so damn obvious and blatant that a lot of the things that are happening in this country right now is because of church, religious beliefs, and how they see fit. Because Clarence, what's my man's name? Clarence Thomas. He wants to overturn interracial relationships, marriages, and ban contraception. So he doesn't want any type of birth control for women, right? And possibly LGBTQ. I always get that acronym mixed up, and I'm so sorry for that. But same-sex marriages is going to be next off the board. But this is also coming from people who say love is love. I think the United States at this point in time, the U.S. stands for just unbelievable shittery, because we are not only going back 50 years, but we're going back almost a whole century. There are things being proposed right now for the government to allow the states to make decisions on the people, which is extremely important for everybody to understand. You have to vote. Your local government is just as much as important as voting for your federal or your United States president and vice president and all those other big titles we know of, we have to make sure that we look at our local governments as well. But it's one of those things where we're going back in a time, ladies and gentlemen, where redlining is going to come back. You already made it unsafe for certain women to get necessary procedures done when it comes to bearing a child, whether you're for it or against it. You now made it extremely unsafe for people to do that or have to travel in order to do that. But now we're getting to the point where you have government officials literally saying, let's roll back the time where everyone is segregated and roll back a time where as long as everyone's happy, we can do that. Oh, and the gays can't be with each other either because we don't like that. Now, when we talked about perception and deception, going right back to the beginning of the podcast, I want you guys to understand something. The perception is they're just trying to make sure that no, there is no way of selling this, y'all. There's no way you can twist and turn this logically and say this makes sense, unless all this is a smoke screen to kind of get us up in arms and riled up and emotional and caught in this distraction while they do something else. Okay, cool, sure. If that's the case, then you need to be looking at where they're not at, where they're not showing, and what they're not telling you, because that's crucial as well. But I don't think this is the case. I feel that they are legitimately trying to do this shit because the white race is no longer the predominant race in the United States of America. It's just not that. And to all my palm-colored brothers and sisters out there, anyone who knows me on a personal level understand exactly what the hell it is I'm talking about. It's one of those things where people are bugging out because they feel as if they're being outnumbered. Listen, you have so many laws that are established. And if you look at the amendments, like for the Constitution, I believe there's 27 amendments, right? The only one that mentions anything about race is the 13th Amendment, where it talks about slavery is abolished and you cannot do anything similar to an indentured servant unless it's for incarceration. That's the only time you can, quote unquote, slave somebody, is when you incarcerate them for breaking a law, committing a crime. Outside of that, there's no mention of race or color. Keep in mind, when these laws were written in the 19th century, what did the country look like? Predominant race was white. Nobody else had rights. And it was completely based on the wealthy staying wealthy and the rich becoming wealthy if they play ball with them. Seemingly, they want to push the clock back on everybody. And I understand how some people may feel that's not accurate, that's not true, that's not what's going on. Do me a favor and point to everything that I had talked about, I had said, I have mentioned, and show me where inaccuracy is. Show me where they're not doing that. But a compelling argument, not just one because you think, feel, and believe, but show me, no, this is what they said, this is what they intended, they've readdressed it. They haven't. This is the reason why this is such an uncomfortable topic for some people, because they don't want the reality of whatever it is that they believe the world is to be different than how they see it through their eyes. But no, unplug yourself from the matrix, bro. You will see exactly what the hell is going on right now. They are afraid. They are no longer going to be the larger group in the country. And I can't express that enough times. So I apologize if I feel like I'm being redundant to some people, but you have to understand that. You lose the control. That's probably what they're thinking. They're going to lose the control. It's going to get to the point where the moment people decide to not take this shit no more, they're going to be outnumbered. And that is a very insecure mindset. That is a very master mindset to have, thinking that once the people below you become larger than you, they're going to turn on you. If you've done right by people this whole time, you would not have to worry about any of those things because those people will always do you well. They'll always do right by you. But if you're the kind of person who's constantly done people dirty and you are afraid that somebody's going to come after you, it's because that's karma right there. Those chickens are finally starting to come home to roost, and you're not ready for that. When I used to work in retail, the trend was you had a manager who would train you, and they're working in your location. And whenever numbers would do well and quarters, this year will beat last year's numbers, so on and so forth, area managers, regional managers would come to the store, talk to the store manager or the store director. Okay, cool, no big deal. And that's how promotions happen. That's how elevations would happen. And I remember where my old manager, James Dyer, would have a conversation with Sonny. I don't remember Sonny's last name. But he would have a conversation with him. And James had nothing but positive things to say about everyone that was below him. Because James knew if my people gets promoted, that means I'm doing a hell of a job training, which would eventually elevate me to a higher position. So ultimately, what James knew is I need to train my people to take my job. Because then that shows my bosses how well of a manager I am when it comes to training, delegating, and being responsible and learning how to make profit. So you did that. You got promoted. It was like a family tree, if you will, kind of like good coaching. Nowadays, in most jobs, nobody wants to train their people properly. And if you do have a person that's underneath you and he or she does well to the point where they're threatening your job, most managers nowadays, they can't wait to take you out. Either transfer you to a different location so you're no longer a threat, either cut your hours so that way you can't work as much, put you on shittier shifts so that way you work with people you don't like at a time that's against what's best for you, give you shifts that where there's less population and less foot traffic so you can't generate as much sales, right? It's almost to the point where now managers feel if I got people who are good, they cannot be around me because it would show my inefficiencies. It would show where I'm lacking at. It would show where I'm weak at. And I don't need you making my weaknesses exploited like that to people. I don't need that. And I've experienced managers like that. And I can tell you from the jump that when you have a government who is afraid of getting outnumbered because the people that they're stepping on will eventually do better than them, that's scary. That is extremely scary because they have to keep the system to where they are winning and we are struggling. And if you don't play game, play ball the way they want you to play ball, you're never going to advance. And that's kind of what's going on right now. They're trying to make sure that the white race stays superior over everybody else. Yet at the same time, white folks on this side are fighting for equality because they also don't want to see division amongst people. At least from what I observe. And then the people who do not believe in division, the people who do not believe in equality, the ones who actually want to be segregated, the ones who want to be divided, they are so out of touch themselves, in my opinion, they don't even realize you have more in common with the people that you hate than you do with the people that you admire. So you're fighting a losing battle twice. You're fighting a battle against those who actually can help you, just to impress the people who don't even think about you. But the only thing you have is color, race, and other things. And that makes you feel happy. Which is crazy. Because I have this wild thought process that I might be able to do something that you can't, but you can do something that I cannot. And if we work together, we can kind of help each other, retool each other, and help each other improve. All because you're unable to do this doesn't mean that you're less of. It just means that you have a different specialty. But it's the division that makes this country so great, right? It's the division that keeps everybody doing their best. I don't know personally because I wasn't around, but when Malcolm X was walking this earth, killed whitey, white folks died, white people are devils. Man, the government loved him. Why? He was preaching hate. And he was keeping segregation. He was keeping division. This is their mindset. The moment that man, from what I've seen and read and heard, the moment that man came back from his pilgrimage and saw a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Muslim praying to the same God he was praying to, drinking from the same well he was drinking from, he had this epiphany. Wait, we are the same. We're just not the same where I'm from. But the world is bigger than Harlem. Okay, so then he comes back. You know what? Damn. We all can work together. Before there's black and white unity, there must be some black unity. We cannot ask for help from the outside if we cannot help ourselves. Rumor has it, air quotes, this is really good podcasting, air quotes. Rumor has it that J. Edgar Hoover made the quote that the biggest fear for America is the unity of the Negro. That's the biggest fear of this country, is unity. Remember, when the Black Panther Party was actually at its peak, its height, the government couldn't do anything because you had brothers walking around Oakland, California, Los Angeles, California, Chicago, Illinois, all these different cities across the country, protecting their own neighborhood within their local, state, and federal laws. It wasn't until they went to go and crash a Senate party here in Sacramento, California, and they went into the wrong room. That's where bearing your guns in open was now banned for people to do. But whenever you have a large group that they want to control, that has more control than them, they don't like that. So therefore they have to dismantle you, which is another reason why drug dealers are kind of looked at as bad people. Well, who put the drugs in the neighborhoods? It wasn't meth head Cindy in Auburn, California, right? The drugs got there for some reason. But people take drugs because they want to escape whatever reality it is that they're facing. They're trying to escape it. Well, drug dealers, what they do, they took that and they turned it around and they were able to make that into a positive versus a negative. And I think the government doesn't like that either, because what was meant to hurt you actually allowed you to make a profit. And they didn't really like that. So it's kind of one of those scenarios where I feel, think, and believe it backfired on the government. And so now they have to discredit everybody. They have to discredit anything and everything that goes on that doesn't work in their favor when it comes to incarcerations, arrests, anything to keep the modern day slavery going. Because like I said, Amendment 13 is you cannot be enslaved or an indentured servant unless you basically break the law and you become incarcerated. Then you lose your rights. That's why there's so many people breaking the law. Now, with that said, breaking the law is also subjective. Again, perception versus deception. What is a law? Yeah, a law is to stop you from doing something bad within your community. Who makes the law? The people who aren't in your community. So people who don't even live in your lifestyle or deal with what it is you deal with on a daily basis are the ones telling you what you need to do, right? Remember in the hood, we would get our asses whooped when we did something wrong. Come home from school, you got discipline at school. You got disciplined with your friend's parents. You got disciplined by your other friend's parent. And by the time you got home, you got disciplined by your mom. And then she hit you with those 6 beautiful words. Wait till your father gets home. Then you had to deal with dad because he had to hear your mama's mouth after he's been working all day. So he had to deal with, he probably wouldn't even trip off whatever you were doing. But because she was all in his face as soon as he walked in the door, he didn't even get to take his boots off. He got in your ass because she made him mad. That was it, right? But it taught kids discipline and consequence. Those people who make the laws don't live in the same kind of conditions we do. They don't have the same kind of restraint we do. So what was once discipline to us, for the most part, was now seen as abuse by them because they didn't know how to do it right. So then they became forbidden to spank your child because now it's child abuse. The point that I'm trying to make is this. The people who live in these high society neighborhoods and areas and live those lifestyles, they make the laws based on what they think and what they see fit, based on how they live their lives. They don't go through the same struggles we go through on this side of the tax bracket. So when it comes to making laws, I said this before, you're looking at old school laws in a new school world. The shit doesn't fit. So it's easy to break a law nowadays. You don't believe me? Spirit of the law versus letter of the law. I said this the last podcast. If the speed limit is 70 and you're going 80 when everyone else is going 80, 85, a spirit of the law kind of police officer is not going to give you a ticket. Letter of the law police officer, they will give you a ticket. Okay? When it comes to certain things, the city of Hayward, if I remember correctly, from a Hayward Police Department, the city of Hayward, it is illegal to smoke cigarettes in public. It's an ordinance. It's a city ordinance. It's illegal. You can get a citation for doing that. Do you see anybody giving tickets for people smoking cigarettes? No, you do not. But here's where the caveat is. Because it is a city ordinance, you can get a ticket. You can get a ticket. You can go 80 on the freeway, flow of traffic. But if a cop wants to pull you over, they can. Why? By the letter of the law, you are speeding. There's the difference. And you can hit them with the whole, well, I wasn't the only one speeding. Listen, I've done this myself. You can see all kind of cars fly by you while you're talking to this cop about what it is and what it's not and this, that, and blah, blah, blah. The fact of the matter is that particular reason is all they needed was to pull you over. And you gave it to them. So I think a lot of people need to learn how to stay within and not give anybody any type of reasons or any type of excuses for them to bother you. But it is extremely difficult because, like I said, it's kind of one of those things where they pick and choose on what it is that they want to do. So, perception versus deception. Hopefully this helps somebody with understanding the difference between the two. And you may not agree, and I don't expect a lot of people to agree. Matter of fact, I'm expecting a lot of people probably to have rolled their eyes. But there's some folks out there who I might have struck a nerve and made you say, okay, I didn't think of it from that perspective. I didn't think of it that way. And I've said this in I don't know how many podcasts. What we need to do legitimately is come together as a community, make decisions amongst ourselves, even if it's a simple, a group of you guys kind of form your own, as I said last podcast, your own gang, and clean up the community. I don't care if you go to people's houses and you just sweep off their porches. I don't care if you go to people's communities and you take the trash out. I don't care if you make something to eat and you feed the homeless. Do something to protect your own neighborhood. One of the things I wanted to do with the podcast before this whole Roe versus Wade thing kind of took social media by storm was I wanted to go over all the amendments that we had and kind of educate people on this is what the First Amendment says, this is what the Second Amendment says, this is what the Third Amendment says. So at least we could understand to learn laws together. Because one thing that they don't like, and I understand when things were established, what the lifestyle was like then, what the world was like when this was created. When these laws were created, and I said this earlier in the podcast, women had no rights. Slaves built the White House. It was a different mindset. It was a different belief. It was a whole different landscape everywhere around. So what we're doing is in today's world, we're taking the letter of the law and we're creating a spirit of what should be included with it. And that's where all this frustration is coming from, because common sense says a woman's right should be included and it should be constitutionally protected. It should be. But old rules in a new world, it wasn't written in back then, and that's what they're using as a loophole. And they, I'm guaranteeing, are not going to revise or rewrite and resubmit the Constitution, because these are what the forefathers were built on. And it's kind of funny, not to get too much on a tangent, but for those who have an issue with same-sex marriages and men dressing in heels and wearing wigs and makeup, ladies and gentlemen, have you ever seen what these founding fathers looked like? They wore heels. They wore wigs. Matter of fact, the wigs were a sign of status and of note. You were somebody important if you had a wig. Right, my times have changed, right? So the perception is different, but the deception is. It's bad for us, but it's okay for them. So as long as those two can stay separated, the world is fine. But again, learn your laws, understand your laws, and if you can come together to create your own type of thing in your community, you minimize law enforcement. Because if you notice, it's only in the poor neighborhoods where police have a high presence. In the wealthy neighborhoods, they don't. See, they pay police to look for people who sell drugs in Berkeley, but they pay police to stay away from Sand Hill over in Palo Alto. It's a completely different story depending on your tax bracket. You see what I'm saying? So, educate yourself. Even if you don't agree with someone, like I said from the beginning, at least keep an open mind from a different perspective, because you might see something different down the line that makes that light bulb get a little bit brighter. Listen, we're going to be back here again on Fridays, 3:30 Pacific Standard Time. You guys, much love. We out.
So, let's start with the E.I.T.H.R.